I used to believe I wasn't creative. Not bad at drawing, just not creative at all. And I didn't just think that. School taught me that. I'm curious. Does anyone here believe that creativity is a learned skill? Now, I'm not here to argue whether it is or isn't, but I am interested in how differently we all define it. In general, creativity is often thought of as artistic expression, such as performing, painting, or imagining something completely new. Personally, I've always described myself as someone who isn't creative, someone with a limited imagination. And that mindset has stuck with me throughout school. School takes up a huge part of my life, so I've noticed patterns over time that feel a little unfair. As a student, you're often labeled a math person, or an English person, analytical or artistic. I've always been more of a math person. However, in English, creativity is easier to see. Give everyone an essay prompt. And while most essays will follow the same structure, introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion, the ideas and perspectives will all be different. That creativity is obvious and expected. Math works differently. If you give everyone a math problem, most people will probably end up with the same answer. Because of that, it's easy to assume math isn't creative. But what we don't notice as easily is how people get there. Figuring out the most efficient way to solve a problem is a creative process. It just isn't labeled as one. Neuroscience research supports this idea. Brain imaging studies have found that creativity happens when the brain's logical and imaginative systems work together, meaning analytical thinking and creativity are deeply connected, not opposites. In classrooms, this kind of creativity shows up all the time. It looks like solving the same problem in different ways, recognizing a pattern before it's explained, finding a shortcut that makes sense to you, or explaining something in a way that finally helps someone else understand. None of these require markers or a microphone, but all of them involve original thinking. Recognizing patterns and finding solutions isn't only useful in school, it's an essential life skill. It's something I'm good at, but it's rarely called creative. And that's where the problem begins. We've narrowed the definition of creativity so much that many students don't see themselves in it. This became especially clear to me through school projects, where I was given assignments with very specific informational requirements. But when it came to the creativity portion of the rubric, it usually just said something like 5 points, with no explanation. I would end up with a poster full of information, but no visuals. Other students seemed to know exactly what to do, adding colors, drawings, highlights, and decorations naturally. Eventually, I tried copying what I saw others doing. I added color-coded headings and illustrations, but it didn't feel natural to me. And honestly, it didn't look great. My color choices felt off and everything looked awkward. I got the points, but it felt like following an unspoken formula. So I started to wonder, if creativity is something you can learn, why did this feel more like memorization than actually imagining something new? In schoolwork, unlike misinformation, creativity wasn't something teachers could clearly guide or correct. It felt like something you either had or didn't. I experienced this again with creative writing assignments. Most of the time, I stared at the prompt with no idea where to start. Even when I could write, it seemed too typical or mundane. All of this made me realize creativity isn't just one thing. In psychology, creativity is most commonly defined as producing ideas that are both original and useful. So not just artistic, but appropriate and effective for the situation. Imaginative thinking is often more visible and more celebrated than analytical thinking, but both are forms of creativity. In fact, you probably don't know the names of the people who design the apps you use every day, but you most likely know the people you follow on them. That contrast shows how differently we see all kinds of creativity. When we only recognize one type, we unintentionally tell students that if they don't fit that mold, they're not creative at all. And that message matters, because when students decide they're not creative, they limit themselves. Not because they lack ability, but because they misunderstand it. By broadening how we define creativity, we help more students recognize their strengths and stop undervaluing how they already think. So, I want to ask you the same question I started with. Is creativity a learned skill? Or have we just been looking for it in the wrong places? Perhaps creativity isn't something you simply learn or don't learn. Maybe it's something you're already rooted in. And what you actually learn are different ways to express it. And when you begin to recognize your own way of thinking, you can start reaching into spaces you thought you didn't belong in and redefining what creativity looks like along the way. Thank you.